him join. But hello, everybody. Thank you so much. And why do we have 0 people on the live stream? Is there no one here yet?
Well, you did just start 5 seconds ago, so
Yeah, I know. Usually we have a couple people who are in here like a few minutes ahead of time. And with the 300 folks RSVP'd, I hope we're in the right place. We are in the right place. There's no other place to be in Riverside. You got to be here.
okay. Well, we can shoot the breeze for a couple seconds.
Yeah, we definitely should. And I'm hoping that like this is accurate. Okay, we got one. Has been a little bit
Has been
spotty
wonky.
at
Are
times.
we
It's been
are we
wonky.
on LinkedIn, YouTube,
Hmm.
Twitter?
Yeah, we should
Cool.
be across all of those. And double check the cool. But yeah, we'll be getting started in just a minute for anybody who's watching and who's here. We're just waiting for some folks to join, to be in the room with us. And from there, we will go ahead and get started. We're really excited about this event we have today, learning about local newsletters. Super interesting, fascinating, in fact, part of kind of the newsletter ecosystem that can be really, really lucrative, really, really exciting. The guests we have today for this panel are all experts on building these like local newsletters, very, very geography, you know, very, very geography based. Yeah, I'm checking. We're waiting a second. Let me double check. See these
We got a,
local
we
legends
got a few people
panel.
trickling in here.
Cool. Yeah, we got. Let me just grab an example of like this person.
Technical difficulties, folks.
Yeah. So the one person I checked to audit this thing, he's unsubscribed. So yeah, we got the reminder went out this morning.
Okay. Let's just
Cool. So
jump in. I mean,
we
we
should
have
be
it
good.
recorded, so
Yeah,
we'll be able
we'll
to
be able
blast
to
it out.
join.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's Riverside, I think.
Absolutely. All right. So with that said, we're gonna jump in and go ahead and get started. Right now we've got Daniel Burke and we've got Ryan Heafy here with us. Ryan is from 6 a.m. City. Uh, we let him do a quick introduction of himself in a second. And Daniel is one of our colleagues here at Beehive, who today is actually as a guest. We're gonna forget that he's part of Beehive. He's got Palmetto Parents, his local
Unbranded
newsletter. I might
apparel,
not be
no
supposed to say
connection
the
to
name
Beehive.
because
No, it's fine.
he
The
doesn't
cat's
like
out of the bag.
being a local newsletter. You'll find the value of these local newsletters is that people join because they are kind of co-located in the area where the newsletter is. So it doesn't really help him if a bunch of people go and subscribe who are not in
Yeah.
literally the
People
proximal
say, "Can I
area.
subscribe to your newsletter?" I'm like, "Are you a
Absolutely not.
parent in Somerville, South Carolina?" And they're like, "No." Then I say, "Well, then you cannot subscribe
Oh,
to my
Dan, you
newsletter." Well,
slipped.
what?
You
Where
let
is
go
it?
where you actually live,
I know. I'm in
not
Somerville,
Monk's
South Carolina.
Corner.
Although, uh, we'll talk more about the details here during this call. There's some exciting news that I'll share with people here for the first time. But
Are we
let's not
breaking news here on
breaking news.
the
Yeah, that's
Beehive
right.
Growth
That's right.
Webinars
That's right.
event?
But
We
we're not
are
there yet. Let's not get ahead of
all
ourselves.
right. All
We
right.
want to hear about Ryan first. I want
It's a,
Ryan
it's
Yes.
to
all
tell
it's all
us
good to
who
share
he
about.
is.
It's all good to share about where you're at or where you're from, so long as you don't throw too much shade across
No,
the
no,
LinkedIn at
I know,
at all
I
of
know.
our peers. I know I'm a little bit shorter than y'all in that last picture that we took, but I won't come after you down there in Somerville. Although
That's
Daniel
right.
and I are actually pretty close,
We
both
are.
located here in South Carolina.
Yeah. Ryan, give us a 2 minute elevator pitch about who you are, what you're doing with 6 a.m. City, how you got involved, the idea from concept to current reality, which is obviously a 10 plus year journey of growth and exciting new ventures and taking a lot of risks, learning from those risks. I want to hear you meet someone on the street, they say, "Is that Ryan Heafy? Tell me about yourself." What's the 2 minute spiel?
Born and raised in Connecticut, mechanical engineer by degree, worked at Sikorsky Aircraft, dual sourcing the Black Hawk helicopter transmission, traveling hundreds of days a year all over the US and Europe, building supply chain. Came to South Carolina to help run an aerospace manufacturing company. Exited to private equity in 14. started a nonprofit around workforce development and STEM education. Recognized that there was a communication gap in the cities that we all live in. A lot of people just don't. In the beginning, we used to always say, "You don't know what you don't know," and most people didn't know how to participate. Our city has hundreds of free events that the community could come out and participate in, and people just didn't know how to spend their time, talent, and treasure locally in the community. It was an observation of mine. My business partner, Ryan Johnson, his family owned the largest print media company here in the upstate of South Carolina. He was the publisher and founder of the Upstate Business Journal, similar to American City Business Journals, but for Greenville lifestyle publications locally. And they were really like high end glossy print, but they had no digital presence. So Ryan and I were kind of movers, shakers, agitators, challenging status quo amongst community boards and organizations. A few cocktails later at a leadership development event, I was asked to come help them solve taking a legacy print publication into the digital space. And at the time, following the Skim, which was getting going, and Charlotte Agenda was just up the street from us, and really looking at those two models and said, hey, how can we do that and how can we scale that? That's the foray into the crazy journey we're on right now.
I love it.
And real quick, for folks who may not be interested, or not they wouldn't be interested, for people who may not be familiar with 6 a.m. City, can you give us a rundown of like what you guys do, kind of like what the model is and that sort of thing?
Yep, 6 a.m. at its core is a daily email. We serve 28 U.S. markets. It's delivered at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock every morning. It's a 5-minute read, conversational in tone, uh, local news and events primarily. We don't cover politics, crime and punishment, or divisive topics, which really sets us apart. Makes it more of a brand safe environment for both readers and advertisers. And we've really kind of leaned in to that back in 2016 when we started. And today if anything, we've refined ourselves and brought ourselves even more close to that core business value proposition. It differentiates us from a lot of the traditional legacy media in a community that's about homicide or car accident or whatever happened last night or whatever political discourse and divisiveness everyone wants to talk about and clickbait. And we really focus on educating and activating communities and driving economic impact. And if you drive economic impact in the community and people see that, then their businesses are likely to advertise in your core product. And so, yeah, today we operate in 26 US markets with our daily email product. And then we are also now doing newsletters as a service, essentially, and building newsletters for other brands. And we can talk maybe more about that through the call today.
Yeah. And if I can just
That's
jump in
amazing.
here for this 87 people in the audience and growing, Ryan is a really big deal, and so is 6 a.m. City. And so the positioning of the topic we're talking about, which is local media, local newsletters, launching a local business, and what 6 a.m. City has actually achieved in the last many years, there's really no better company or case study to look at for local business, local properties, local audiences, niche audiences than 6 a.m. City. And so I'm extremely excited for this conversation. I know Kane just joined us here on the panel. EJ has a whole string of 20 questions that we'll be able to discuss, and it's going to be kind of open dialogue. But sit in, strap in, and take notes because we have, in my opinion, one of the best there is to talk about local media here with us today, and so it's an exciting time.
100%. Thanks so much for those who are joining us. I guess we might have Riverside just had a second and needed to catch up to show us who was in the room. We just broke 100. So this is really exciting. Thank you for everybody who showed up today. While I ask this question of Daniel, we have a producer in the background. You guys can't see him or hear him, but he's going to be responding to some things. Tony, would you mind dropping our Q&A sheet in the chat? So for everybody who's here, if you have some questions that you want answered by our great panel, drop them in this Q&A sheet, and we'll tackle them kind of towards the end. And so that helps kind of keep everything organized and gives us a way to have a nice kind of tight Q&A session. While you guys are putting those Q&A things in, Daniel, would you want to tell us about, you obviously work at Beehive. You're an incredible talent on the sales side, but after work and before work, kind of in your 5 to 9, you also moonlight as one of Charleston's premier newsletter publishers. Can you tell us a little bit about the newsletter that you run and kind of what the deal is there?
Certainly, certainly. I am a dad. I have an 8-month-old boy and an almost 3-year-old boy, and my wife and I live in a suburb of Charleston. It's called Summerville, South Carolina. We love where we live. We love the community. Very family friendly, very diverse. And about 2 years ago, we moved here about 3.5 years ago. About 2 years ago, we identified that people who want to build a community for their own family, like how do I go meet other families? Where do I go? What's family friendly? Where should I spend time to connect with other people who have kids my age? There actually wasn't really a central location where people could go actually get that information. So there were Facebook groups and there were Reddit forums and there was, group texts, neighborhood texts, next door apps, and like lots of just discombobulated stuff. So we saw an opportunity. We're like, well, we're very passionate about being parents, about building community, about doing things that are kid friendly, because we have kids, we have to do things that are kid friendly. And so we launched this year in March a newsletter, and we just had 4 topics every single week. On Friday, it's one event that's kid friendly, one restaurant to try that's kid friendly, one thing to do, so not necessarily time sensitive, but like something you should go do, a park, something like that, and then what we call a Palmetto piece. The newsletter's name is a Palmetto Parents, and the Palmetto piece is just an inspiring thought, a section that's supposed to be inspiring for people with kids of all ages. We were fully organic, no paid growth for about 3 months, just posting, links on Facebook, telling our friends, got to about 500 to 1,000 subscribers before we started paid acquisition. And we love it. We were having a great time. We have long-term partners. We have returning advertisers. It's not something that we're currently like, hey, let's make this a mid-6, low 7-figure vertical. It's really just a side project that we're passionate about. But I don't, I'll share briefly about this. It's just Summerville, South Carolina until tomorrow. We are officially launching Palmetto Parents Charleston. Officially Charleston. I tell everyone I live in Charleston because no one knows what Summerville is unless you live in South Carolina. But as of tomorrow, we'll be launching our second city, which is Palmetto Parents Charleston. We're very excited. The addressable market in Charleston, as Ryan is fully aware of, is much bigger than the TAM in Summerville, which is a much smaller city in comparison. And so we have a great time. My wife is incredible. She's the writer. I am the editor and the Beehive Maxi behind the scenes. But I love what we do, and it's a lot of fun.
That's great. Love to hear that. Excited for the point where you're able to take that and quit your full time 9 to 5 and go all in.
You're not getting rid of me that easy.
Down a little bit of reverse psychology. I figured it might work. So before we move on and we get into some of the questions, real quick, we also have Kane, who is a little bit more of a newcomer to the space, but he runs a local newsletter out in Long Island. Wanted to have him here to kind of get the full spectrum of folks. Kane, could you give us a quick intro, and then we'll get into the questions for you guys as a panel.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me pretty well?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So pretty much my core business is helping YouTubers, content creators, social media, people.
You're actually a little quiet, Kane. I'm sorry. If you want to speak a little louder.
Yeah, if you could speak up a little bit.
Okay, is this better?
A little better, yep.
Okay, I'm gonna have to start yelling then. Pretty much my core business is helping social media content creators build followings on email and build newsletters. So I kind of transitioned a little bit from that, and I was like, you know what, why don't I make my own newsletter? So I decided to make a local newsletter around the area that I live in, which is on Long Island. Did a little bit of research to try to figure out kind of like what the best approach is, and it's actually quite interesting because when I was doing my research into local newsletters, a lot of my research was based off of Ryan Heapy and Ryan Snedden, which are both pretty big, obviously, local newsletter operators. So if you're tuning in to this live stream and you can see kind of the people in here, Ryan Heapy obviously is going to be by far the most experienced. He's in multiple markets all across the U.S. Daniel is now opening his second newsletter. And me, I just started my own within last month. Um, but I did a lot of learning, did a lot of research, a lot of understanding of the market, um, and I definitely will share some tips and tricks on getting sponsors. I think that's kind of like my main focus right now is the paid acquisition and really focusing on seeing what the audience likes. Your newsletter is useless unless you have people that actually enjoy it. Uh, if you have people that enjoy it, then you're going to have an easier time selling to sponsors. So everything here is extremely important. So I think I could definitely give ideas into helping you optimize your open rates, um, acquire customers, well, acquire newsletter subscribers, and of course, actually going out and selling and pitching yourself to local businesses.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kane. Really appreciate your time here today. Perfect. So just jumping in, I want to toss this one to Ryan and get his perspective. Having been in kind of this media space for a little bit, you've seen a couple different things. What unique challenges do you face when you're trying to serve a local audience compared to more of like a traditional newsletter? If you're a newsletter operator who's used to sending like maybe like a skim style or a morning brew style that's kind of anywhere, anytime, anywhere, what unique challenges do you see, you have to overcome or kind of adjust your thinking around when you're moving to a, geolocated local newsletter?
I think a lot of the so if you look at all of our markets, one thing that does ring true is that most folks have pride in place, whether that's around a community, a sports team, uh, whatever affinity group or area that you're looking at. So for us, that started primarily with cities. Um, in a way, it actually created a differentiation that's favorable for us. It is very easy to find content in a community that resonates with the community that people can relate to on a regular basis versus a more broad scale morning brew approach where you're kind of hitting it's almost a spray and pray, and there's like a total addressable market collectively across the whole industry is maybe higher, but you're paying a higher CPA to get those subscribers in. There's more competition in that space that you're battling. So we actually see a lot of advantage in the local space in that super niche. The content's always changing, but also always relevant to the community. The acquisition cost is below $1, and then the revenue piece is interesting too. From a CPM basis, it's way higher to work with a local bank or grocery store or sports team or whatever that's connecting in the market because they're used to buying billboards and TV ads and newspaper ads and stuff that were just way overpriced, candidly. And so now you're giving them an opportunity to connect where there's actually a true direct engagement and they can see conversion through newsletter. The challenge is you got to teach them that. And so a lot of folks on a local level don't necessarily have the like media buyers don't have the uh, knowledge base of newsletters because they're not as familiar with it. So there's like this selling process where you have to be like, first, oh, hey, this is a newsletter. What the hell is a newsletter? Oh, I can advertise in this newsletter. Oh, I get direct conversion. Oh, wait, this is kind of expensive. And I'm like, yeah, but I have 80,000 people reading this in your one city, and you're over here publishing something in the newspaper. And they say they got 80,000 people, but really it was only went out to 20,000 people, and the newspaper told you it was read 4 times over, and you're on the 20th page. So like, we're trying to you have to. There's a lot of different battles on the revenue side. However, on the content relevance and acquisition side, it's very easy to play and win in that niche.
How does the fact that you have like a newsletter where you have some of these metrics that you're able to measure a little bit more deeply than something like a billboard or traditional newsletter placement? How does that influence the conversation? Does that I mean, I would imagine that helps the conversation. Is that kind of like the kind of light bulb goes off, or is that still kind of like a battle when you're trying to make that sale to be like, hey, we have this data that we can provide you? Is it how does that really that conversation typically go?
It's a win and it shoots you in the foot at the same time because I think people don't realize how low conversion is sometimes, just
Hmm.
generally. Like you put the billboard up on the side of the highway, like how many people actually did something because they saw that billboard? They might have driven past it 5,000 times, but no one actually took an action. In the newsletter, I might have, 50,000 people that receive it. I might have had 2,000 people click on your ad and people took an action, but hey, I really only saw at the back end, 6, 8, 10 conversions. Well, but that crushed your billboard and it cost like a tenth of the cost. And so, but people see a small number of conversions and they're like anticipating that they're going to have some thousands and thousands of conversions. And so it's hard to get them sometimes to understand that or to understand that when it comes time for renewal. And so you're like, hey, okay, I went and I bought this ad. It cost me $1,000 to place it in the newsletter. I didn't see exactly what I thought on performance, but when you actually compare that to the other billboard and TV spots and whatnot, the impressions are the same,
Mm.
or greater. And so, but people are not thinking about it that way because unfortunately, we actually have really good data about the conversion side. And we're very transparent about it. So when you go back and see it, it's hard for people to balance and understand and compare a newsletter to some of the traditional media channels that they're used to.
And to
That
add
makes
to
a lot of
that,
sense.
I
Yeah,
think
Daniel.
the brand affinity and the brand trust that a local newsletter has when compared to a top of funnel like billboard or a bench advertisement or a pop-up on some random website where you're scrolling on Google is worth so much more to the advertiser. So one click, if they're expecting 1,000 and they get one, and that middle or even bottom funnel click from someone who is exactly in their ICP, clicks, buys, converts, tells their friends. I mean, the entire model of what one subscriber is worth to these advertisers and companies is entirely different when it's in a newsletter versus a local newsletter specifically in their TAM or in their ICP versus a billboard.
Yeah, amazing. So Ryan, in terms of the, obviously your TAM or your addressable market is naturally very limited. What types of approaches have you found to really effectively reach those groups? We heard from Daniel before saying, like Facebook groups and stuff like that. Does that has that worked for 6 a.m. City? Is it more social ads? Is it organic? And if so, like what approaches do you guys take?
Facebook lead ads still the number one conversion. I think the difference that we see is the ability to get super niche on what that content is. I can push a city guide about the best places to go have brunch in town or the museums to take your kids to or whatever, and it's the content fueled lead ads that like someone really wants that piece of information. It's something that they might go back to on a regular basis, but they go capture that. They come in and directly become a subscriber to the newsletter, and then we just serve them a bunch more of that kind of content. So they're constantly being hit with stuff that's adding value. So the retention is there too. It's actually kind of odd. Like we don't churn through nearly as many subscribers as a lot of other publications do. Uh, we have really good retention because people like the content. However, that doesn't necessarily correlate to higher click through and conversion on advertising all the time. Because these people they're there, they consume the content, they learn from it, they don't necessarily make their buying decisions in the instant moment all the time. But we're able to get them in and keep them, and they really give a shit about what we have to say. So they're looking for us and making their purchase decisions and stuff based off what we're sharing.
It makes a ton of sense. I know that's going to be super useful for folks who are just getting started. One of the questions that I've had, I live here in Brooklyn, New York, so a little bit away from South Carolina, and having heard all about all these local newsletters, I've had the thought to myself, it's like, well, it'd be cool to start a local newsletter. Of course, there's actually a couple that already exist here in New York. Go figure. There's so many people, but when I was kind of thinking about that, I was like, I'm brand new. I just moved here in July. So I'm like not a native. I'm not like plugged into the community. Is that something that's kind of a non-starter to start a newsletter? Do you really have to like kind of be super tuned into the local community in order to like start a local newsletter? And I would imagine in some ways the answer is probably yes, and that you have to make yourself kind of super in tuned, I would imagine. But like, how do you go about that? If you're opening a new market, do you find somebody who's like super kind of in that, in that community, or do you like, how do you guys go about that? That's something that I'm just have like no concept of like how you would go about.
I think similar to Daniel, we have boots on the ground in most all of our cities. So depending on the maturation level of our newsletters, some send weekly, some send 5 days a week, some send 6 days a week, and so the newsletters that have reached the unit economics to support 6 day a week sending have two editors typically in every single market. They live and breathe that community. They understand what's going on. They have forged the relationships to get the inside information on new developments and announcements and things that are happening in the community. That makes your product way more relevant. However, at the beginning, leveraging AI to source and curate content for the community and pushing out that type of information that's produced by AI, can you do that? Yeah. Is it authentic and the right thing to do? Not necessarily. And also, people read through the BS, and so it's harder to monetize those things. You can create it and build something and push content out, but your ability to monetize that's only going to go so far. We have in our markets where you have uh, some maturation, you have two editors, a dedicated salesperson, you have all the support resources of the rest of our business. A community could do $1 million in annual revenue or more behind a single newsletter. Um, a solopreneur hacking it together and not necessarily being fully committed to it is going to have a harder time. Similarly, if you look at every TV station has a newsletter. Most of those TV stations, some of those TV stations have 40 newsletters. Their 40 newsletters make less than our one newsletter because they're just vomiting out stuff from a RSS feed from their sites, and it's just not packaged and produced in a manner that their consumer cares about. So your commitment level to the quality and relevance of the product is going to make a big difference in retention and monetization and engagement in the newsletter.
That's fascinating, and I think there's like a huge parallel I see when I'm kind of doing our marketing work in that like every company has a newsletter, and like 99.9% of companies like waste their newsletter. They use the once a quarter for just like these updates that are very self-centered that nobody cares about. Usually it's like an intern is like drafting like the company updates, and it's just kind of why even bother. So it's like I find that interesting that there's that parallel, of like you have these like kind of established groups who are doing them but kind of poorly, and then it offers the opportunity. It sounds like by the same token that like could be that would be an opportunity for like local newsrooms and local like television places. It's like if they wanted not to make competition for you, but it's like if they wanted to compete more, it's like it seems like a pretty ripe opportunity. Um, Either maybe for acquisition or for consulting or something like that. If you're out there in the audience looking for kind of some sort of hustle. Um, how do you balance a local, like one of the big parts about local obviously is that people are together, you're in the same area. So do you guys leverage like IRL kind of in person, like that dimension of the local component of the newsletter to like facilitate in person events, or is it all like that in person part being, you know, oh, we're gonna advertise that hey, there's this event going on, people should just go to this event because we're advertising it. Is there you guys ever do anything like in person?
I think that Daniel and Kane should answer this, but I'll tell you what
Okay.
we don't do. What we don't do is that, and we don't do it because we've tried it. We've bought swag. We've got cups and glasses and mugs and hats and pop up tents and pop up banners and all this stuff. We probably spent actually not probably we probably spent over $100,000 over the years in crap, candidly, that we bring out to these events. And then you go back and the question is, did that $100,000 yield 100,000 subscribers that I could pay $1 per subscriber for that I can monetize? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
Like nowhere near it. That $100,000 might have converted into like 1,200 subscribers. But that's a really expensive CPA. Like, so
Hmm.
if you're going to spend your effort, it's better maybe to place your editorial folks into the community where they're participating and adding value and capturing content that's relevant and enhancing the product,
Sure.
versus just spending money to like put stuff out there because 9 out of 10 times it's not gonna move the needle in a manner where that capital can be deployed in a better way that's going to support your product overall.
Totally. And before I jump to Daniel and Kane to kind of go kind of give some answers on this for them. To that point, do you ever do any in real life like email collection, like have something where people are signing up either at a computer or an iPad or like a sign up sheet, or you're completely digital, like no boots on the ground because it's just not the juice isn't there.
Juice isn't there. It's usually crap emails. You like go to a festival and someone
Yeah.
writes their stuff down on a piece of paper, then you gotta sit there and transcribe it all into the computer. I mean, sure, we've tried all of those things.
Farmers
I think
markets.
I yeah, I think for us the difference that, and like even like when we turn on new markets, some of our editorial stuff are like, let's go try this or let's go do this. We've learned that a lot of it doesn't work and doesn't work specifically at scale.
Mm.
If I was Kane or Ryan Snedden or somebody else or Daniel and I had my own market and it was my baby and my product in my one city, probably be a little bit different. I think there's an opportunity there. I think there's an opportunity to facilitate and monetize the events, and you can distribute your time a little bit differently,
Hmm.
or maybe the events build sponsorship around it. But when you come and try to do things at scale, I mean, that would mean us shipping logistically stuff all over the country, like just a little bit different. Solopreneur newsletter in one city is one thing, or two cities, Daniel, they're very very close to each other. But once we recognize once we started to spread out, it becomes a lot harder. And then once we spread out, you also just have monetization challenges with it. Like when we have stuff that's all regionally grouped, you can get sponsors and things that support this whole community or area, like across all 6 newsletters in the Carolinas. But when I go put one in Seattle, the advertisers over here don't exist in Seattle. So there's a lot of things about how all this stuff works that if there's a lot of effort required, and it's not easily scalable, it's maybe not the right thing to do with your dollars and time.
Interesting. Well, okay, that's great insight, and I think that's perfect. Daniel, what is your experience? Do you have as a
Yeah.
solopreneur located in one city, kind of hustling? What
Yeah.
do you what's your experience been?
We early on we looked for partners that were heavily involved in real life events and community so that we could basically curtail on the back of their events and be a presence without being a presence. So
Hmm.
one of our recurring partners right now, the 6 month partnership probably will renew, is actually a realtor as part of Keller Williams. And so he is his own realtor and he's connected to a much larger real estate firm. He does a lot of IRL events and
Mm.
he is a vocal partner of Palmetto Parents as well as we are vocal about him being a partner, which of course, you know, single family homes and parents and decision makers with disposable income, most of them own their houses, like perfect partnership from the very beginning. But when he goes to farmers markets and he has IRL realty events and all the different things that realtors typically do, we have agreements with him to be a presence there, even if we're not a presence. And so he had something recently. It was like a breakfast with the Grinch, super kid friendly for kids. We were not even there in attendance. I was out of town. Actually, I guess my wife did go, but it was last minute. But he was telling people about Palmetto Parents because we told thousands of people about this event in our newsletter, and so a lot of them went. And so there's that connection point. So I think my experience, we're not spending $100,000 on swag, so it's a little bit different ROI for us, but we are seeing, and I think it's the approach is different. Like the hyper local from the way I'm looking at. I mean, even the 2 3 year vision is continuing to do adjacent cities to where I'm at now. Like I don't necessarily see Palmetto Parents Dallas being a thing that I consider at any point in the future because it's just not in the current business model or thinking. And so I think it's hard to quantify how much money you should spend for IRL and if your specific newsletter has even an opportunity for IRL. Because we aren't super concerned about profitability and acquisition and CAC for our subscribers, and it's a passion project first and then a business second. We do stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense from a business perspective because we want to.
Yeah.
So from, I think, if you're out to spend $50,000 to make $250,000, I think Ryan probably hit the nail on the head. Like, hey, for local newsletters, IRL events is probably an uphill battle, and you can do it. You can try. You might tap into something that we have not tapped into that's making you $1 million, but I would stick digital. I think that's what makes a local newsletter effective, is that it is digital. Um, but I don't know. I'm interested in Kane's thoughts. There's a lot. I'm still in the experimenting stage. Ask me again in 24 months.
Yeah, so yeah, in terms of in-person strategies, in terms of like growth, you're gonna get absolutely none from me. I'm only in for a month, so I'm not gonna BS you and tell you these magical things. But I do want to get back to something that Ryan was talking about earlier with AI. If you have to be local, it's in the name, local newsletter. You should be local to where you are. Now you don't have to, but honestly, you should be like let's be real here. So uh based off of my experience, you can use AI, you can use Perplexity, you can use ChatGPT to help you find kind of like local things to do and events and everything, but it's still going to be pulling from the same 2 3 websites. So just use those websites, and honestly you're better off just directly bookmarking those websites and referring to them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, or however often you write your newsletters. That's the first thing. Second of all, um, AI is never going to, really get deep into the community like you can as a person. For example, libraries. Libraries are an amazing place to actually go in and find like local things to do. I have like 7 libraries that are local for my newsletter, and every single time I go there, there's always events in the libraries that they're posted up that aren't on the website, that you can't find anywhere in like online, or at least it's in a harder place to find online. So those are kind of like extra ways to actually help fill your newsletter with content if you're struggling with that. Um, and lastly, if you're running any type of business in terms of media, so let's say you're making YouTube videos, let's say you're a public speaker, let's say you're writing newsletters. In the end of the day, people want to be entertained. No one really cares about sitting down and reading your slop about sales tips 101. You need to make it entertaining. If you're teaching people how to sell stuff, at least make it entertaining to read. There's a couple of really amazing newsletters that I can recommend for that. The Follow Up by Nick Conley is excellent because it's extremely educational in terms of the content, and it's not dry, it's not boring. Like, you're not killing yourself opening it. So another really important thing for me to mention is that design is absolutely important for you. Invest time into your design, because if I open up a newsletter and it's just a white background, nothing else, let's be real, I'm probably not going to open it again, and even if I do, it's going to be to unsubscribe from it. So in the end of the day, your content needs to be high quality, so you need to actually put in time and effort into putting words, images, making the design. You have to make it look pretty. So if you want to help increase your open rates, focus on simply making the newsletter high quality. Make it something that you would read yourself,
I have some
right? So this is a,
thoughts
this is a classic
on
test.
something you said about AI. I'll just trickle this. I actually wrote about this today. Um, and it's actually a little bit different angle than what you said. I think the chasm that will be created in the next 2 to 5 years between people who do use AI and don't use AI is a larger chasm than we have ever seen in a tech landscape in history. So here is my anecdote. I was up all night the other night building apps in Replit that do everything you could possibly imagine needing to do to build hyper effective local newsletters. And I will be using the tool that I built to assist my own growth in the business, because what I did in 12 hours with this tool is mind bogglingly effective at aggregating really high quality content at light speed, like I had 100 employees, and segregating it by literally dozens of different types of content, types of niches, types of families, types of kids, types of places, cities. I mean, I went so far down the rabbit hole, I had to like get help to come back out of it. So, all to say, 100% aligned, Kane. The content has to be worth digesting by a human, but man, you can definitely use robots to help you make the content digestible by a human. I will just throw that out there if anyone is interested. I do think it helps when you're a good writer. I am a good writer first. I'm not learning how to write with a robot, but if you, SSP, don't know who that is,
He's not
what I
telling
built
you.
is private equity to my soul, and I will not be sharing it publicly unless it is something
Until
worth
it goes
monetizing
public.
someday. But for now, it's mine. But yeah, what are you
Yeah.
thinking, EJ?
No, I was just gonna say I think that I don't think that both of the things that both you and Kane said are actually mutually exclusive. I think that
Agreed. Agreed.
they can. There's a great place for both of them. Imagine like because fundamentally what he was saying is just like there is data that does not live digitally, and if you just take the extra legwork to like walk your legs down to the library that's on your corner. I have one a block from me. There's going to be stuff there that like AI doesn't have access to. And so I think his intention was like, if you are competing in a sea of other AI newsletters that are all pulling from those same three websites, you can have some alpha. You can have some like differentiation by just doing that little bit of legwork, which I think is really smart. I did have an idea I wanted to contribute for the thing, and I wanted to get Ryan's opinion on this because one of the things that we've learned here at Beehive in building this company is that like there are times in which you're going to do things that don't scale in order to understand a market, in order to understand users and stuff like that. So if you were starting out, if I was starting out, one thing that I might do is like go to my local farmers market and like not with necessarily any swag, but just like almost like maybe get like like a little box and do like a raffle or something like that. Go to a local restaurant, say, hey, I'm doing this raffle. I'm from this newsletter we're launching. Would you be willing to donate a $20 gift certificate? And I'll put your logo on this stand and talk about you, basically advertise you for like $20. It doesn't have to be a lot. People are motivated by very small amounts of money, surprisingly. Um, and I would basically go and say, hey, like, we're this new local newsletter, enter your email, to basically win this gift card. And then basically, I think you would be surprised at the number of people who would do that. You're not going to get around like the digital transcribing thing. Maybe you set up an iPad and a laptop and you do it like that. If you're really smart, you could just hook it up with like, Make or whatever and auto validate, right there as they're standing there. But what are your thoughts on that, Ryan? I was just thinking like putting my growth hat. It's like, there are ways you can like leverage these relationships in the community to not necessarily pay. And I'm not thinking, it's like my first thought was like, okay, get like this big prize and say like, we're going to give away something for like it's worth $400 or $500. And I was like, wait, why even do that? Just like $20 from like the local steakhouse that they're willing to donate to get their name out there, and then just do a raffle. Like, not to say you're going to do that when you're at 6 a.m. City with like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, but if you're just launching and you're really trying to get a foothold and you're trying to understand who your audience is, do you think that would be like a good approach? Should people who are launching potentially try that?
If you're trying, so I think there's a really important distinction between like your first 100,000, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah,
And
let's
so in the beginning, if you are starting a newsletter and you're in your community and you can't get yourself to 1,000 subscribers in like 2 weeks, you probably are not working very hard and going out and putting the boots on the ground, because you can go walk around and get 1,000 people to sign up for your newsletter in 2 weeks if you just walk around and do that. You can take the iPad with you and be like, I started a newsletter, and this is also going to get you out there and get the word out. Here you go, and you bust your ass and you go get 1,000 subscribers. Like that's kind of like 101. Like go do that. The other thing that I think is maybe more valuable, and like where Daniel should be going to like the Children's Museum in Charleston and going, hey, I will talk about the Children's Museum once a week for the next 3 months, and in exchange, I want to be like co-reg on your newsletter, or like every time someone signs up to be a member of the museum, I want their email address. You have an opt-out box that's auto-opted in on their thing, and now you're picking up their subscribers at the same time. We did that with sports teams. People want to become, they're buying tickets to sports team or venue. They're also subscribing to the newsletter at the same time, and we're advertising that venue on their behalf. And oh, by the way, they're the prize. Like they'll throw that in for free. So it cost me $0, and I picked up a whole bunch of people. Are they going to be? They're not 100% confident what they're getting when they sign up in those manners, but there's a bunch of them. You get a lot of people in your system. Your churn's going to be higher In the beginning, you get two things. You get your lifetime people who are just 100% committed to you, and you got to shove as much crap in there as you possibly can. I know that you're going to churn a bunch of it out, but that's also going to help get the word out. And a bunch of people are going to start, spreading the word. And then you get into your referral phase. And now you got to go say, okay, well, which platform am I going to use to drive referral? Am I going to give away a bunch of swag and crap for people referring? Candidly, more work than it's worth, in my opinion, most of the time. Or you're spending more money on swag or things that you're giving out. Um, Referral sprints, I think, maybe work better. Like, hey, in this week or this couple of days, we're going to try to go get as many people as we can, and we're going to give $100 to whoever, or everyone who refers somebody is going to be entered in a thing to win $100, or something that's more discreet and focused. Sometimes is a better effort than just an ongoing, like when you get to 5 subscribers and then you get to 10 subscribers and you achieve some milestones down the road, and like then you switch platforms along the way and you have to like figure out how to transfer it. It's just, as you grow, that's just not necessarily sustainable. um yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like small incremental little things that people have written about a lot. You should try them all of them. If you're not trying all of them, then you're not doing yourself a service, because you're also not learning what's not going to work. And what works for Daniel might be different than what works for Kane, and for us, depending on what your audience specifically is. But on local, you can go out and touch these people. So go out and do that.
Amazing. Before, as we're coming down to the last quarter of this, before we get to the Q&A section, we have a ton of great questions that people have dropped. So we'll get to that in just a minute. I do want Daniel to tell us a quick story. This is something that he brought up on one of our previous webinars that was a great story about how they landed one of their first, or I don't know if it was one of the first, but one of their most unique advertisement deals with a local business that I think really kind of touches on a couple of these different things that we're talking about, maybe somewhat indirectly. But when you talk about the children's museum, it kind of really kind of there's a little bit of a connection between the two of these stories here. But Daniel, would you share with us? I don't know if you've told Ryan before, but I think Ryan will
Are you
appreciate
talking
it.
about the dog groomer?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
exactly.
So yes, I will tell that story, and I'll also reverse engineer one of something that Ryan said. When you have specific sections in your newsletter that are already always talking about some relevant company, so in my example, a restaurant every week and an event every week, just measure the data and show it to that company. Hey, by the way, I just wrote about this event. I got this many impressions, this many clicks, this many people went to your event more than likely. Here's a poll after the fact that I said, did you go? Yes. Would you like to run an ad? And so you're reverse engineering ad sales by just writing your newsletter. And so I have 4 sections in my newsletter that any of them could be an ad any week if someone wanted to pay for it. So just a great way to look at potentially producing the content. But I had it was an inbound ad opportunity approach me that said, I would love to place an ad in your newsletter. It was a dog groomer, and it was obviously not like, I was not looking for dog groomer advertisers. I guess not obviously, but it just wasn't on my radar. But I asked them, all right, show me your ad. Transparently, I don't know in my audience who has pets, but here's the cost. Let's do this. Let's trial it out. She ran one ad and then she did a 2-month campaign with us, and it went really well. What I did in the first ad placement, and what it opened my eyes to doing for ad sales in general with local newsletters, above the fold, no ad placement whatsoever, I asked, hey, by the way, audience, do you have pets? Do you have a dog? Just a poll, yes or no. Do you have a dog? Yes or no. 68% of my audience has a dog. Had no idea, but that's massive. That's one, very helpful data for me to know. And two, now I can go back to this advertiser, which I did after her first placement. I said, hey, your placement looked really good. The impressions were awesome. The clicks were great. Looks like you got some conversions, some sales. By the way, I now know that most of my audience is actually very interested in where they're going to get their dog groomed, super in line with what you're selling. So that's where that long-term engagement came from. Now I also, and this is from day one, I recommend every single person do this. On subscribe, I surface in the exact moment they subscribe a survey. Says, hey, thanks for subscribing. Tell me more about yourself. So in my case, I say, Are you a parent? Do you live in the city? Both yes or no questions. Right off the bat, I know 98% of my audience in my Somerville newsletter lives in Somerville, and 95% of them, sorry, flip flop, 98% of them are parents, and 95% of them live in Somerville. That's incredibly niche. No other person in Somerville has an audience that's that niche, tapped into the parents in their local community. So I ask a few other questions like, what needs do you have? What ideas do you have that we could implement? IRL communities, events, all the stuff that I'm just sourcing and then turning into content right then and there. I think everyone should have an onboarding survey that collects information that helps them, one, create content, and two, sell ads more effectively. You're muted, EJ, but I felt your praise through the camera.
I was gonna say that's exactly what I was looking for. I think that might be the first time I accidentally was muted during one of these webinars. If you,
But not your first time
no,
in life, because
for, for
the
those
ongoing
who,
joke internally is that you always do that.
I'm always doing that. Cool. So we have a bunch of questions in the chat. Ryan, I want to do a little bit of a rapid fire. So it's not going to be so much like a whatever the first thing to pop into your head is, but more or less kind of just like a couple, maybe one or two sentences. And then we can like dig deeper in anything that like seems interesting, but I want to make sure that everybody does get an answer. I think we have like 10 or 15 questions. So we'll spend a little bit of time, maybe like 30 seconds to a minute on each one. Aside from newsletters as a service, what have been the most successful ways to create revenue streams outside of selling ads?
Affiliate and giving campaigns. Do 100 grand a year and just giving, like, hey, you like what we do, support us, and we will rack up 100 grand against 1 million plus subscribers.
Wow.
That's a pretty easy one, especially if your content is good and people like it and you move the needle and make an impact. Affiliate marketing we've gotten pretty good at. That does require volume though to really have a meaningful. It's just something you have to kind of have someone focused on. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that if you're doing the newsletter all entirely by yourself too. But I mean, you become really good at a couple things: growing audiences, aggregation, packaging, and delivery of content, and monetization. And so we've leaned into each of those to add value to other partners. And I kind of put that in the newsletters as a service bucket collectively, but like supporting other people and achieving a goal is kind of like where we get a little bit more into campaigns. Like we've done custom newsletters for topics that we're good at. We already write about wellness all the time. It's a lifestyle type product in a lot of ways. So the hospital system wants to sponsor their own dedicated newsletter. We hate sending dedicated newsletters like just for a business, like where some financial thing wants to send one all about them. So instead we write wellness newsletters about the community, about the 5K race coming up and all this other stuff. And that newsletter is sponsored by a healthcare partner. So dedicated newsletters in a different way, envisioned really as a content piece that fits our brand, sponsored by, is a little bit different than a traditional ad unit. We make some money around other like games, events. Like it's very easy to throw an events calendar into your platform that people can pay. So like we have a self-serve revenue platform that allows people to put listings. If you think about the classifieds and local, homes, jobs, events, deal of the day, somebody died, somebody was born, somebody's had a wedding. I mean, all those things people love to see themselves in a publication. That's why your local TV or why your local auto person is like always on the ad. They just want to see themselves. People pay for that stuff. So give them an opportunity to do that.
The audio quality is always so bad, and the script is always so poorly written too. It's like the owner's like dad's dad that started a car auto shop in like 1942 is like, come buy from the Ram Auto Parts deal. I'm like, man, you should have hired an actor. But yeah, that's a great point, Ryan. Done it again. Totally muted. Completely off mic. Oh, double
I'm used to
whammy.
running the show here, and it is a little bit loud with the street next to me. I'm so
No
sorry,
worries.
everyone. What are your thoughts on running do you guys have any publications where you run like a in real life like newsletter like an actual newspaper component, like any kind of like dual modal publications, or are yours purely online? And um, you know, do you see any value in something like that's kind of more tangible?
We don't, but we do for other people in a way. Like we've done economic competitiveness report from a city comes out, and it's absolutely the most boring information that anyone ever wants to consume. And like the Chamber of Commerce delivers it to the Chamber of Commerce members. Well, we come in as a partner and say, hey, listen, your thing is really boring. It looks awful. We'll come in and make it look awesome. We're going to distribute it all through our newsletter, and we'll make you a printed copy that y'all can distribute. So it's easy enough for us to have a partner to create a printed publication or a printed version of something that we create digitally. These days, that's a very easy handoff. But we're not creating print products that aren't bought and paid for by somebody else. And typically, it's because we're just distributing it already in the newsletter. That's the value, and printing it is just a side hustle.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Let's see. Got some others here.
How about paid versus unpaid newsletter subscriptions? As a
Yeah, that's
question,
something that's been coming up. Yeah.
our goal is to keep our product free, not going to the subscription model. If people want to pay us for it, that's wonderful. They can do that when they get in a giving campaign annually. I think that if you build a viable local product, it can be ad supported. I do think one of the things that is probably a strong prediction by our business is that you'll see some others like Axios Local and maybe even CityCast who are losing, millions and millions of dollars a year in those operating models pivot to subscription out of necessity. But I think in some instances you're doing that out of necessity, unless that is your actual business model to begin with. It better in B2B, you may see more of a subscription based thing, but if you're trying to appeal to the local community and make information accessible to get people to spend their time, talent, and treasure locally, then why are you charging them? You should be able to go get it supported by the community impact brands that want that available for their community.
Makes sense. Do you have any thoughts on like local podcasting as part of like this whole strategy of being able to like reach people in different types of media?
I think some people are doing it backwards. Um, I think that you can. I think there's a AI lends itself to some really unique opportunities.
Hmm.
Here, if you have a newsletter, I believe that information can be repackaged and delivered in a lot of different ways, including audio and video. And if you think about it correctly, you could probably be successful in it. And I think you'll probably see us playing in that space in 25.
Can't wait to see that. Cool. Well, I know we have some more questions that we may not have gotten to. We actually have a record of all of those, and when we do the recording, we'll go through and answer some of those, with some of the content that we have, because we want to make sure that we are respectful of everyone's time here. Ryan, how can people find you? I know you dropped the link to 6 a.m. City at the beginning of the call, but how can people find you if they want to reach out on socials or subscribe to 6 a.m. City?
6amcity.com. If you want to go anywhere to subscribe or get in touch, if you reach out to any one of our local newsletters, if you reach out me specifically via LinkedIn is the best way. I try not to throw my email address all over the God's creation. But LinkedIn is a great place. I'm always hopping on there to see what's inbound. I think the biggest thing for us, and as it relates to folks here that are listening today, is the newsletters as a service business, whether that's paid growth, designing and building your newsletters, or monetizing them. The biggest thing you'll see that's coming out of us right now is sports newsletters with Locked On Podcasts, producing 30 NBA newsletters. If you want to check that product out too, we'll drop the link here shortly. But we are now building newsletters for other large publications and smaller publications. But cradle to grave, from building your audience and designing and figuring out what you want to do with your content, we can take you from start to finish. And that's really been a cool area of growth for our company.
Amazing. That's incredible. Thank you so much. Daniel, I'm not going to have you tell people where to find your local newsletter. I don't necessarily think he went into detail, but he has a very painstaking way to filter people to make sure that only the people who are from his area are the ones getting that newsletter. So even if you found it and tried to subscribe, you're going to get booted immediately.
It's on my personal product roadmap to eventually disable people's ability to subscribe if they answer my survey a certain way. But that's something that's probably only useful for like a very select number of Beehive publications. So yeah, no, you can find me on LinkedIn. I put my link in the chat there. Tell me in the note when you request to connect that you were at the webinar, because I have 1,000 connection requests that I ignore. But I would like to connect with anyone here that would like to connect.
Cool. And Kane, where can people find you on socials?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on LinkedIn. I'm extremely active on LinkedIn. I'm the type of person who you send me a message, I have to reply as soon as I see it. So the moment that I see it, I will get back to you. So you can reach out to me, Kane Lewandowski. Good luck spelling my last name, but you could take the screenshot right here of my last name, slap that into LinkedIn. I really quickly, I see that there's 2 questions and I need to answer it. Like they're very simple. Ivan said, for local newsletters, what's the content about? Local stuff. It could be you could be showing off restaurants, things to do, basically of that nature. You can also look at 6 a.m. City. You can look at Daniel's newsletter. You could look at mine, huntingtonweekly.com. I will unsubscribe you as well, actually, because I only want to have people that are local. But come check it out, see what I have. It might help you get a better idea. Local chamber is an amazing place to just actually build relationships with potential sponsors. If the fee is $100, $150, even if it's $300, pay it. Get in, shake some hands, talk to people in person. You're gonna have a much better time making sales in person rather than cold calling and emailing. Trust me, I've done it all. So I hope that helps as well.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you
Kane.
so much, Ryan and Kane and Daniel, and then our producer, our eye in the sky, Tony. I say that just because you're at the very top corner of my screen and I have 2 screens, so you are literally kind of just above everyone.
This tiny little thumbnail of Tony at the top of my screen.
You are the eye in the sky. Thank you all so much for joining today. And to everybody who tuned in, we've lost about a quarter, but that's okay because we've gone over time. But thank you so much for joining, everybody out there who's either here right now or joining in the recordings after the fact. We appreciate you. We would do this for you if you didn't show up. Like, we were worried. We were at 0 for the first minute because there was a delay. We were like, oh my God, is there no one here? Did we mess something up? And we didn't. We had a great show out today. More than 100 people joined. And so really, really just thankful for everybody. With that, look out for the recording. It'll be out in a few days. We'll send you the link after this call, where to find it. Ryan, thank you so much. Best of luck with everything with 6 a.m. City. We look forward to working with you on Beehive.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.
Take care. See you.